Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to do another champion design breakdown, and this time focusing on Aurelion Sol. Now, why do a champion design breakdown on a champion that is going to get a CGU, you might be asking yourself? Well, quite frankly, I'm doing it because Aurelion Sol is getting a CGU. See, I don't agree with Riot that Aurelion Sol's kit is bad. In fact, I think it's one of the best designed kits in League of Legends, and I think that no matter what happens, it needs to remain in the game in some way, shape, or form. Today I want to talk a little bit more about how Aurelion Sol's kit is so good, and more importantly, why it is being changed, but also why I feel like this is still a mistake. Now, Aurelion Sol's kit is phenomenally interesting and unique amongst the entire stable of characters in League of Legends due to its focus on his passive, Center of the Universe. Now, there have been other champions with interesting passives before. Ivern, of course, can farm camps without actually killing the camps. Azir has essentially a 5th active as a passive instead. There are a lot of really interesting passives in the game, but none as much as Aurelion Sol's passive because of how Aurelion Sol's passive basically influences the entire rest of his kit. It is the center of Aurelion Sol's kit, and that makes it a very interesting ability just off the cuff. Not only does it manipulate Aurelion Sol's ability to deal with the wave, last hitting while moving around to make sure that your stars end up last hitting the minion in conjunction with your auto attacks or other abilities, but also it literally has gameplay implications because Aurelion Sol can't hide in bush because of how big these stars are and because enemies always get to see them. And these are some really interesting implications that already Aurelion Sol has to deal with. This is then before you add in the W, which allows Aurelion Sol to push his stars to their outer limit, increasing their speed and range, which then gives him some really interesting plays that really only he gets to make. Not only does this give Aurelion Sol this interesting no-go zone that he's able to create for himself and for his allies while his stars are up, but it also means that enemies that are able to get inside of that zone are essentially immune to any damage that Aurelion Sol can do. And this already builds in a bit of a weakness to Aurelion Sol. If you get within his zone, you're going to have a good time, versus if you're not able to do that, how exactly do you get past the stars? There's already some interesting gameplay implications at stake here. W is also interesting for more than just get stars at bigger value, because the stars physically expand to the location and will contract when it's done, meaning that an Aurelion Sol that is able to well-time his stars expansions and contractions will get extra hits in that maybe lesser skilled Aurelion Sol players would not be able to do. And this already means that this character is phenomenally interesting from a design perspective. But even the rest of Aurelion Sol's kit all sort of evolves or it can uses Aurelion Sol's passive. Obviously, Star Surge is just straight up a stun, but also a stun means that Aurelion Sol can keep you in place so he can get multiple star hits off with either his W or his passive stars active. The fact that the Q projectile detonates at his outer limit means that if you are stunned by an Aurelion Sol Q other than a giant Aurelion Sol Q, you are now in range for his stars to hit you if he activates his W, giving Aurelion Sol players a sort of window to say, oh, okay, I know this is going to be a free damage and a free cooldown for me to expend here. The fact that the damage and stun duration also scale with distance means that Aurelion Sol compounds his weaknesses. Yes, he can stun you at point-blank range, but it's still a weak point for him because it's going to be lesser stun and lesser damage than if he pushes it out further. In a similar vein to Xerath, another champion who's supposed to be weak if you're up front and deadly if you're further away, this is sort of compounding on that, right? And it's another champion that then has this effect. Even Aurelion Sol's E, Comet of Legend, sort of plays into it. What do Aurelion Sol stars do? They let him push very effectively because of their very big range and the fact that he can generally be hitting the entire wave with his stars at once if he positions appropriately. This then means that Aurelion Sol has synergies with being able to shove and roam. He kind of wants to be clearing waves as fast as possible with his stars, so then he has the option of actually taking Comet of Legend out for a spin into other lanes, and this then combos with his Q. So Q isn't just a slave to his W, but Q can live on its own and is enabled by Comet of Legend, giving him the sort of movement speed out of combat to not only gap close, but also to build up some really, really big stars, which then compounds the strengths of his Q, and that it increases in effectiveness the further away Aurelion Sol goes. It's also a very thematic ability. I know I don't normally talk about this too much, but in space, hitting a distant target is extremely difficult because even a small margin of error will compound itself over extreme distances to the point where you're nowhere near your original target. Aurelion Sol's EQ combo feels very much so like this, which is kind of an interesting concept when you think about it. Even Aurelion Sol's ultimate plays with the rest of what he wants to do. Voice of Light pushes enemies to his outer limit, which again means that you can then throw a Q, which will automatically detonate at that range, stunning enemies. It guarantees that they're going to be taking damage from your W. Obviously, there's utility if you use it outside of your space, but it also doubles as a sort of emergency tool for Aurelion Sol to really get enemies away from him in the event that he's jumped on by enemies who get within his sort of sphere of influence, which makes it an interesting ability. He gets this, and Xerath doesn't, because Aurelion Sol has to be closer to the action than Xerath overall, but it generally ends up being a very interesting cooldown for him to use. And all of this combined means that Aurelion Sol is a character that really values positioning in a way that basically no other champion does. Aurelion Sol really says positioning is so important, not only because of normal champion cooldowns and champion ability usages, but also making sure that enemies can be hit by my stars, which is like the biggest thing that Aurelion Sol has to deal with, trying to line up things like his Q. Do I keep following this? Do I let this detonate? Do I quick detonate this early? There's all sorts of things that Aurelion Sol has to consider from a positioning perspective that I would argue almost no other champion ever has to do. So Aurelion Sol's kit is extremely well designed. Why then are Riot removing it? A couple of the arguments they could make is that the kit doesn't match the character. That Aurelion Sol is a big, scary space dragon that really makes players want to say, I am a dragon, hear me roar, and go smash champions, but his playstyle revolves around manipulating these stars and not really Aurelion Sol doing that much on his own. And I disagree that this is a mistake from a thematic perspective. In my mind, Aurelion Sol is so bored with dealing with these normal human beings that are using swords or guns or occasionally birds to fight him that he just can't care enough to actually use his full star-breaking power. Like, yeah, he could destroy that champion in one go and Runeterra all in, the same blast, but that's not interesting, right? The only thing worse than losing is failing to be entertained, and Aurelion Sol is definitely here to be entertained, which is why he says, I'm just going to kill you with the stuff orbiting me. You're not worthy of me actually trying to kill you, right? So I think it makes a thematic sense, but generally Riot's issue is that Aurelion Sol is a very resonant character. Lots of newer players look at Aurelion Sol when they're first scoping out the characters in the game and say, oh my god, a cool cosmic space dragon that makes stars, I want to play that, and they try, and they end up with this kit that, admittedly, is a little fiddly. There's a lot of things that Aurelion Sol has to manage, there's not a lot of button pressing. Even Aurelion Sol's original design, his W was a toggle, which then meant that it was a lot more of resource management and tracking cooldowns and tracking when how long he can keep the area of effect up. There are a lot of things that make it a little bit more difficult for newer players to deal with, and they would sort of much rather just play a traditional character, but it means that then this incredibly resonant character isn't actually something that players are going to want to play as. And I can acknowledge that this is potentially a reason to rework the Champions kit. I think Aurelion Sol is a big flagship character for League of Legends, and if he had a better kit, it would be way easier for Riot to sort of justify and say, hey, you guys want to play this game? Look at this character we have. That said, though, everything I've said about Aurelion Sol's kit lets me know that it's one of the strongest design kits in the game. I absolutely love it, and I'm just so disappointed to see it go away, basically just because Riot want to make a clickier, more exciting, button-pressy champion, right? I can't fault them for that. They do have to make money at the end of the day, but it does feel like they're really losing out on some really cool mechanical design that they have. And honestly, I would love for Riot, at some point, to basically create another champion that just has Aurelion Sol's kit. Like, literally, I don't care how you reflavor it. I don't care if it's another Celestial champion or if you find a way to make it just like a Magic champion, or even if you find a way to say, yeah, this character has bolas that they've wrapped around themselves, and the bolas just spin because this is now a Piltover character, and they've got a motor attached to it, and they just spin around. Like, I really don't care how you flavor it. I want this kit to stay in the game. I think it's incredibly resonant. I think it's really, really well designed. Again, one of the best design kits that Riot have ever done, and I think that to lose this kit from the game would just be a travesty. So, anyways, that is going to be it for the champ design breakdown of Aurelion Sol. You guys will have to let me know what you think of any of this down in the comments section below, and certainly if you feel the same way about Aurelion Sol's kit and staying in the game, let me know that down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave it a like, and if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it, and I'll talk to you all later.